Welcome back. You're still watching the Politbureau. Over the past few weeks, we have seen the re-emergence of former ANC President Jacob Zuma, who has now taken to social media to articulate his views or what people say about him, while someone who has got her fingers burned a couple of times on the streets of Twitter is former DA leader Helen Zille, who has had her successors scramble to put out the fires. The leadership of these two coincided at some point, and if you search the net, you might even find them dancing together. But how is it that even after their tenures as leaders, they still managed to rattle the cage? Joining me to discuss the power of the X is political analyst Professor Seepe and Professor of Politics and International Relations at UJ, Kwandiwe Kondlo. Thank you guys so much, professors, for joining me this morning. Let's start from that question. How is it possible that these two figures are able to rattle the cage? Professor Seepe?
Well, what is very clear, is that the reason why we have this discussion is that the ANC and the other parties have not been able to manage this process. And it becomes much difficult when you have a party like the ANC that claims to itself to be a broad church. One must also understand that these are the concerns that arose when there was a transition between Mbeki and Jacob Zuma, where Mbeki would be making some statements on some of the things about commenting. But what we need to understand is that these are all political animals, and in a sense they also have views. And in the ANC there's what you call also a broad church, which means that there are some ideological tendencies or strands that the members of the ANC represent. Some people in brush strokes will say Mandela was more of a social democrat, and Mbeki was more of an Africanist. And Jacob Zuma, some people would characterize him or mischaracterize him as a nationalist, although they could be, these are not all mutually exclusive. Yeah. Even when we talk about Mandela, it does not mean that he was less of an African, but there was a particular thrust. So the issue is, how do you manage that process? I think the ANC can manage it in a simple way that says, first of all, we have always said that we're a broad church, there's multiplicity. But what saw the re-emergence of Jacob Zuma has also been that the party itself has decided to use him as a scapegoat for its own failures. So when people begin to start invoking your name, you'll want to respond to that. Yeah. And with the DA, it's a different kettle of fish. The DA is trying to chart a different path. And this is why they wanted my money, not another white person. And it creates a challenge with regard to the constituencies, where some people feel like my money might be moving away from the core of the DA. And the people like Helen Zille who are there continue to start raising the issue. So it's really the tensions of transition, which will subside with time.
Professor Kwandiwe, and this is the issue, is that if you have, for instance, with the DA, if you have Mmusi Maimane who's trying to go a different direction, and you have the former leader who seems to be pulling a different direction as well, and some then try to assess the two and come to the conclusion that probably the predecessor may be more powerful. And Mmusi Maimane finds himself having to come out and put out the fire, not directly saying to Helen that you are wrong, but saying that us as the party, we don't agree with her.
Aldrin, it's an interesting observation, because first of all, you see this thing, you don't only find it with political parties in South Africa. In Tanzania, when Benjamin Mkapa took over, there were a bit of tensions with his predecessor. Now in Botswana, quite recently, you can see what is happening. Also in Namibia. So it's like something which you find with modern mass political parties. The issue, Aldrin, even with the DA, it goes to one central point: defining the rules of engagement within the party.
And how do you do that?
Yes. In other words, as the party, have we defined rules of engagement? And if you stray outside these rules, what do we do to you? I don't think our political parties have these very clear rules of engagement. For instance, Helen Zille has gone actually on Twitter, I'm told, and I've actually seen in the news, saying people must boycott tax. You see, the tax revolt. I mean, has this been debated within the DA extensively?
But then do we then say that someone who may have led a party before does not have an opinion or should not articulate the opinion publicly, especially when that opinion seems to be going contrary to what the posture of the party is now?
It actually goes back to defining rules of engagement. That if you are a former political leader, ex-president, when you have new innovative issues that you want to throw to the public, let's digest them within the party.
So you first start in the party?
In the party.
And Professor, here's the thing with the former President Jacob Zuma, for instance, is that he's always defined himself as within the party and always said that he respects the resolutions of the parties, comes on social media, this discussion around land expropriation without compensation. And he's saying, actually, why are we even having this discussion? Why shouldn't we do what other governments are doing, where the governments actually own the land and nationalize the land? And we know some have said that this is an EFF policy, but the former president is arguing that actually it's in the Freedom Charter as well.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to the rules of engagement. And within the ANC, as I said, there's a broad church that represents different interest groups that are passionate about certain postures. But there should be a way in which this is managed. That's why the notion of rules of engagement.
Are sanctions an answer?
No. What it
could
says,
they work?
you know, you should not suppress people, but you should find a way in which those views are moderated properly. The ANC has always prided itself in saying that once there's a new leader, you rally around that new leader. But at the same time, where there's been a contestation, one must be sensitive to that. This is why when Cyril took over, he made the notion of unity to be central and renewal. But once you start having some people becoming triumphalist within the ANC and start condemning, as they also did with Mbeki, then you trigger a need for a politician to say, but I think I'm being misrepresented. For instance, the ANC has now changed its tune. Last week, you had the whole delegation going to Davos, talking about the 9 wasted years.
Yeah.
Now they are changing the tune because they want to piggyback on some of the positives that happened under Jacob Zuma. For instance, the issue of HIV/AIDS, the building of new universities, the fact that the state and the Toba service indicate that when it comes to basic services, South Africa was #1. And of course, they now accept that there were these successes, but there were also these failures. So the ANC, unfortunately, because of the serious contestation that is there, that they're not managing okay, it creates a scenario where people say, but you guys are not serious about unity.
Is this then to the detriment of the party? When the party is campaigning, can the party trust a Helen Zille, the DA for instance, can the party trust a Helen Zille to go on the campaign trail and articulate the party's position, not her own personal views?
Yes, but Aldo, you're coming to an issue which is actually a very sensitive one, the issue of trust.
Yeah.
Because the issue of trust is a serious challenge, not only in the DA, in the ANC, in the EFF, I mean, in many political parties. Can they trust then that Helen Zille will go out and articulate what is specifically in the mandate of the DA? I'm not really sure. You see, I'm not really sure.
Can the same go for former President Jacob Zuma?
That's a difficult one. That's a difficult one because President Zuma...
He's campaigning. He's actively campaigning.
Zuma does have some advantages for the ANC when it comes to numbers.
Yeah.
Especially in KZN. But at the level of perceptions, people keep raising questions that this is a seriously dented former president. Look at the state of capture inquiry. But our politics, I mean, as things stand currently, is the issue of numbers. You cannot undermine it. And he does attract.
And I was actually speaking to, I just forgot the political analyst that I was speaking to at the time in KwaZulu-Natal. And he made the argument that as you look at the former President Jacob Zuma, he's being used as a mascot. The mascot that comes, that pulls in the numbers, dances and sings, but he's not allowed to speak.
Yeah, I think that is what the ANC must try to manage. And I can tell you it's managing it badly. It's managing it badly in terms of the resolutions of the ANC in Nasrec, where members of the ANC said, when are we going to talk about this? This is why the EFF was taking advantage on bringing the issue of land, because they can see that in all the talks in the ANC, it's double-speak. When the leadership of the ANC speaks in South Africa to the masses, there is a language that said they will expropriate land whether they like it or not. But when the people go abroad, it's something else. And when they are here, they talk about no, we must not insult our former president. But before even we deal with this, I should actually indicate that there have been positives. I mean, if you take somebody like, just to pick up on the issue of trust, somebody like Kgalema can easily go and engage with the masses and support the ANC. Thabo Mbeki has not done it so much in terms of saying,
campaigning.
I'm going to campaign. Yeah. But there's been a moment where that was handled. When Tony Leon stepped down, he actually said he deliberately stepped aside to make sure that it does not contaminate. So it comes down to the rules of engagement, it comes down to the issue of trust.
Okay, then thank you so much, both professors, Professor Seepe as well as Professor Kwandiwe Kondlo. We've come to the end of this segment. After the break, the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Beyond the alleged corruption, the commission has got politicians spinning their way into even more webs, and they don't know it yet. Why is this happening?